Welcome to another episode of the Make Mental Health Matter show. I am your host, Kelli Melissa Reinhart. Thank you so much for watching or listening, whichever way you might be. I just appreciate you jumping back in. If this happens to be your 10th, 20th, millionth, okay, we haven't had a million episodes, but still, thanks so much for coming back. And if this is the first time you are watching or listening, I appreciate you being here because really, truly, the Make Mental Health Matter show is all about bringing people's stories, also bringing their expertise, their knowledge, and really aligning with mental health, substance use, and suicide, and having the hard conversations that nobody really wants to talk about. But the cool part is we're starting to talk about it. We're talking about mental health more often in society today, and substance use, and even suicidal thoughts, and those that have died by suicide, and really having these open conversations because it was such a thing in the past that it was taboo, or you felt really shameful if you had lost somebody to suicide, or maybe you had or were thinking about suicide and you felt like you couldn't talk to anybody because nobody would understand what you were going through. And that's just really, truly not the truth. And the great part about the show is we have those conversations to really share our stories as related to all of these things, and letting you know that you're not alone in this world. And there are other people that want to help, people in this world that are doing amazing things to help in that world. And I'm excited to have my guest back for today. He's been on a couple of my specials. He also was on an episode by himself, but I'm bringing him back because we're going to have the important conversations about youth and suicide and what he's doing that is so incredible in this world to help in that space. So I am going to introduce him. So Jason Reid, he is a seasoned entrepreneur with a passion for making a positive impact. After tragically losing his 14-year-old son, Ryan, in 2018, he dedicated himself to empowering parents with vital conversations about youth mental wellness. Through his nonprofit, Tell My Story, and its subsidiary mental wellness media, he advocates for youth mental health with initiatives like his documentaries, Tell My Story and What I Wish My Parents Knew, and engaging talks. Aside from his philanthropic endeavors, Jason is the co-founder and co-CEO of National Services Group, overseeing multiple construction brands and coaching executives worldwide through CEO Coaching International. He's also involved in various adventures like the Mohr Sports Group and the Vocal Gym. Despite his busy schedule, Jason prioritizes family, being married for 3 decades, and cherished time with his 4 children. Beyond work, he explores creative outlets, including filmmaking, writing, music, and athletics, embodying his entrepreneurial the words are catching me today. Entrepreneurial spirit and commitment to making a difference. So, without further ado, Jason, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kelli. I think I got tired just listening to my intro.
I'm like all the words for whatever reason,
Yeah.
but again,
And speaking of intros, I just saw your new intro, I guess it is, to the show. It was fantastic. Well
thank
done.
you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you back. I know you were on the Mental Health Action Day special this
Mhm.
year, and you've also been here before. But can you share with the audience, those that don't know about you, a little bit about your story? Besides, I gave just a very brief synopsis.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been a business guy, all that kind of stuff, and um, never really thought too much about mental health for my kids because I didn't think I had to. Um, we all lived in a beautiful home together and had a great life and hung out together and had family dinners together and on a regular basis. And I traveled a lot, but I was, every time I was home, I was home. I wasn't the guy who went out golfing with my buddies on the weekend or out to the bars or whatever. I was home. And I thought, the kids and I were all good. But in March 2018, while my wife we were out celebrating her birthday on vacation, my youngest, Ryan, texted us and said goodbye. It doesn't get easy to tell this story. It just doesn't. So we didn't see any of it coming. And that night he took his life. I thought he was just a grumpy kid. I had 3 others that were more grumpy. He left a nice note, essentially, saying it wasn't her fault, but you still wish you caught it. But he hid it. He wasn't the kid who you'd think would be, depressed at all. He thought he was just, he's 14, he's gonna be grumpy from time to time. So after all that happened, it changed our lives forever, as you can imagine. And you either decide to, well, I guess you have a couple options. You can dive into a bottle somewhere, which isn't really a good option. You can become very insular, which is an option. Or you can try to make a difference in people's lives and hopefully see that this is not for nothing, right? And so I went out and I did a TED Talk very quickly, which is a little raw, very first one I did. Did a movie called Tell My Story, which is up on Amazon Prime. Started the organization. The original organization was called chooselife.org. And I bought the website because I thought, well, that's what I wish kids would do and people would do. And it was like $10,000. And I'm like, why? That's expensive. And then after about 6 months, someone said, that's the old anti-abortion site. I'm like, crap. so I didn't want to get in a fight by wearing a t-shirt in an airport. So I changed the whole organization over to Tell My Story, because Tell My Story is what Ryan asked me to do. When I was going through his drawers of his room, he's like, you wander around looking for clues or answers. And I found 2 sticky notes. One said, here's my username and passwords. And the other one said, tell my story. Sorry. So that's the story of Ryan. And since then, we've done, the documentary Tell My Story. I've done a TED Talk called The Hot Lava Talk, which really compares life when I grew up to when Ryan grew up. Because the question is, how did we get here? And, Kelli, I would suggest that, with the rest of this conversation, that's the last part we talk about suicide. And the reason why is because suicide is the end result of a whole bunch of things going wrong, as you know. And it happens to kids. It happens to a lot of people. But the reality is there's a lot more people, 10x the amount of people that are living in depression or anxiety and having miserable lives because of it than those that kill themselves. And those are the people I want to reach. Those are the people I want to talk about. Those are the people I want to help. The ones that may never and hopefully never even think about it, but having them lead a better life and consequently not do what Ryan did. Make sense?
Yeah. And thank you for resharing your story. I know it never really, it doesn't get easier. There's some days that it's like, it's okay, you can talk about it. And then there's days it grabs you, right? So being able to just share your story again, thank you.
Yep,
and
thank you.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Is there are so many people that are out there living this life, or maybe just surviving, right? Like maybe they're not even living, but those are the people that we really truly want to we want to reach, especially in this conversation. So I just appreciate you sharing and then really carrying on his legacy through all the videos, all the films. And I know that you do a lot more very authentic, like, let's talk about it. It's not sugar coated. It's not like the glamorous, everything's perfect movies. It's like, we're going to have real conversation with real youth that are really struggling, and how they are now and how they were, how they are now, and then really into more of like what has been helpful. So I love what you do, especially with Tell My Story.
Well, and the movie we have right now, we've been working on, it's been out for a couple of years now, is What I Wish My Parents Knew, which is where I interview, 8 kids talking about their mental health issues and what they went through. And it's meant to grab you and kind of shake you a little bit and go, wow, this could be my kid. And it's not available on YouTube or online. It's only available through programs that we put into schools or online programs, because I don't want this floating out there and people, finding out these kids or anything else and bullying them or anything else that might happen in the world, right? So it's a very specific, you have to show up to an event to see the movie. And it's meaningful. It's meaningful to kids to see it. It's meaningful to parents to see it. But it's probably a good idea, Kelly, to figure out, like, how did we get here? Like, this was not the world I grew up in, right? And I'm 57 now. When I was 14, this wasn't a conversation. Did it need to be a conversation? I don't think so. It was there, right? But it's not there to the level it is now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think about this all the time also, just in the work that I do with my nonprofit. Is I contribute a lot of it to technology. It's a great thing and it's a bad thing, and it is one of the, like, even when I grew up, right? Like, we were outside, we were playing all the time, we were always active. We didn't come home until the street lights turned on, right? And but I also grew up in a smaller town that we had that availability. And I think we just, at least like prior to now, we didn't have these conversations. But I also think that COVID and the pandemic kind of opened our eyes to a little more things. And I don't think it's a new concept. I just think that, and I don't know, so this might sound weird, but the other thought that goes through my head is like, I almost feel like we were like tougher back in the day. And that probably sounds really weird, but it's like not the get over it mentality, because I hate that mentality, but also like the you can do hard things and you can be really independent. And I don't know if that's as it's as normal, I guess, nowadays. I don't know. That's just my thought.
Well, there's definitely conversations about the resiliency of kids today versus back then, right? I did something called Jay on the Rocks. I'll have to send you the link and you can toss it in at some point. I did a whole bunch of them and we somehow lost a lot of them, but it was conversations with the kids. And one conversation with Ryan in particular was about, they were playing tag in the school and then they were told they can't play tag anymore because we're not allowed to touch each other. I'm like, well, how the heck do you play tag in school? You have to run up to someone and go, I'm like, you're kidding, right? You can't even play tag? And then I wrapped them in bubble wrap at the end of the show. It's just to make a point. It's like, what the hell? What's going on? Like, when I grew up, and resilience is definitely a piece of it, right? But how about starting with the fact when the phone rang, it was attached to the wall and my father answered it, right? And it had a cord on it. And it was like, and he'd stand there and decide whether you could talk to that person and how long you'd talk to them for. And usually you stand there while you were talking to them until you said, look, I'll just see you at school tomorrow. And you went, all right. Because that's how it was, right? And I didn't pay attention to the world. Like, why would I? I was a 14-year-old kid and it was 40 plus years ago. And I didn't know what was going on in the world. Like CNN wasn't a thing when I was a 14-year-old kid, right? So the news wasn't, I mean, the newspaper came, but I wasn't going to read the newspaper. Like, you get stuff all over your hands. I wasn't going to watch the news on TV because I was like, why do I care? So I didn't know what was going on in the world. And now you fast forward to where we are today, and you've got 12-year-old kids who are debating who should be president or not, and who's crazy and who's not crazy, and who's I don't care who you voted for. This was a crazy election cycle that took a lot out of a lot of people, including our kids. And these same kids are now wondering, like, is there going to be a World War III? Is there going to be a nuclear war in Europe? Is there going to be a nuclear war in Taiwan, China and Taiwan? What's going to happen in the Middle East? And oh, by the way, does any of it matter? Because in 10 years, the world's going to be gone because of climate change. Now, whether you buy into any of these narratives or you don't buy into these narratives isn't my point. My point is your kids are hearing them. And they never heard them before. I didn't. I mean, there was, stuff going on when I was a kid. I couldn't tell you even now what it is. I never bothered to look back at it. But I didn't know about it. I mean, how about you?
Yeah, I think about when I was younger, and same. I mean, my dad he'd read the newspaper all the time, right? But I didn't, unless I went to the comics in the back, right? Like, yeah. I didn't care. And we watched the news, but we also, I remember MASH and Love Boat, and those were like the ones that I remember. And it was like, because I got to stay up to watch those. So, those were the ones I don't remember worrying the anxiety and the level of worry that happens right now with youth. My son, he's 9 years old, and he comes at me with so many different things. And I'm like, where did you hear that? Like, how do you know this? And he's like, TikTok or YouTube or whatever. And I'm just like, wow, it's such a different world from when we grew up. Absolutely.
Well, and that's just the first layer of it, right? Because there's layers of this onion. Like, so first you take that layer and go, okay, that's the news cycle layer. That's the phone layer. Now you've got let's just go right into the electronics. Let's go into the internet. Let's go into all that kind of stuff. Let's go to social media. It never existed.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I didn't know what my friends were doing on the weekend, because unless I called them and their dad answered, why the hell would I know? Yeah. So if they were at the mall with other friends and I wasn't invited, I might hear about it Monday, but I'm like, oh, whatever. Right. But now it's all over the internet. If everybody's life looks better than your life. No, I got to say, I feel like in the last couple of years, it's calmed down a bit. Like, we're not on Facebook, or I don't feel like people are on Facebook as much. I don't feel like people are on social media as much. I don't feel like kids are on as much, because I feel like there's been a bit of a backlash towards it. But you still have this thing that people look at life and go, everybody else's life is better than mine. And then you get the fake news cycles thrown in there with stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And their little brains are the same as my little brain was at 14. Our brains haven't developed that much more. Mm-hmm. They're given a lot more to work on and try to figure out, but our brains work that much more developed. Our psyche isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we're going to go to a quick sponsored break, but when we get back, I have one more thought about the phone thing. So we'll be right back after this quick sponsored break.
1,917 people die daily from suicide globally.
I lost my middle sister, Kelli, to a completed suicide on February 20th, 2017.
How does Make Mental Health Matter save lives?
Number 1, awareness.
My story, all over it, isn't unique. I am a domestic violence survivor and a recovering addict. For 14 years, I was in active addiction, and because of Kelli and the work that she does and the opportunity to have my voice heard, I was able to stay clean and sober and have hit a year. I'm still here, and if it wasn't for Kelli answering my call the day that I thought I was going to take my life.
Number 2, conversation.
I'm curious, and I know that I've heard a lot in the BIPOC community. It is very hush-hush. It's like one of those things that you don't talk about. Like, you literally feel like it's not a conversation you can have. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
First, shout out to Kelli, because I'm glad that she asked the question. I researched you before I went on your show, and I saw how real and authentic you were. And I just appreciate the question, because it is different, and we have to have tough, courageous conversations. So yes, I always say I'm a triple diversity threat. I'm a Black woman with multiple disabilities. Now, I'm not really a threat, but to other people, I may be, because people fear the unknown and what they're uncomfortable with.
Number 3, education.
Kelli's passionate commitment to mental health awareness is a beautiful thing. It's clear in her social media posts, it's clear in the resources that she puts together, in the activities that she provides, her collaboration with organizations, and the consistent way that she continues to deliver a message, encouraging people to understand that they can share openly and to break the stigma around mental health. Kelli's topics cover children and adults, talk about things that we can do as a community, things that we can do individually, and her website is packed with information and resources and all kinds of contacts that you can use to reach out, whether you're dealing with something yourself or you're looking to help somebody else who is struggling. I encourage you to check it out.
And like that, we're back. If you happen to be thank you. If you happen to be joining us, thank you so much for watching the Make Mental Health Matter show. I have my guest, Jason. We are really having an open conversation about his story, tell my story, and then youth really in general in society today. And so you made me also think, like, when you were talking about the phone and the corded phone, and your parents would answer, so they would decide who you could talk to. I think that also goes into when we talk about bullying, and we could leave our bullies, right? Like, you didn't know what they were doing on the weekend. We had no idea what anybody else was doing, and we could leave them at school. It didn't matter, and then pick them back up right on Monday. But now they have access to technology, and anywhere at any point they can send text messages or like through Facebook Messenger or whatever it is. And I think that is another component, is they never are able to get away and just like decompress unless you're a parent who sets time limits and actually listens to what they're saying on conversations and checking their phone and all those things. So yeah, I think it's just a whole different level.
Well, and it's also different, right? Because if you think about who bullied me when I was a kid, it was always the big guy, the big goofy guy who just wanted to beat people up. And I was a small kid and an easy target, right? Those guys still exist, but they're not the ones bullying you on social media. They're the ones that are going to bully you in the schoolyard, and they're not going to bother taking the time to bug you on a text message. They're going to grab you and throw you in the trash can. But it's harder for them to do that because schools are paying attention, right? But now there's a lot more bullies than there used to be, because anybody with a keyboard, any size, can be a bully. So now you've got people who just want to be jerks, which is unfortunately it's a decent sized part of the population these days, can just start bullying people. Like it's tough, and kids can't hide from it. And which is why it really comes down to, in my mind, is we have to have these conversations with our kids. We have to have open conversations about life that my parents didn't have to have with me, because life wasn't that complicated. Just go to school, do your homework, and play. Okay. Now it's like we have to talk about everything from the election to global warming to bullies to all what's real and what's not real on social media, what's real and what's not real on TV. Why is half the country angry at the other half of the country? Like it's we have to have these conversations that we never have to have. And during all that, it's not just the kids that are challenged. As adults, 45% of the population, depending on where you want to read your stats, are struggling themselves, right? And then, is the economy any good? Depends who you talk to, right? I mean, yes, wages are up, but so is the price of gas and eggs and bacon and everything else, right? And is it going to change? I don't know. But we all have to have more conversations. The thing that's crazy about all this, and I want to give one more piece on how the world's different, right? Is even growing up in sports, the pressure that are on kids in sports these days to be on travel teams and to practice 3 or 4 days a week, and where a season used to be a season, now it's like 12 months long or 11 months long. Whereas every weekend parents are gone with these kids at different lacrosse games or soccer games or baseball games, and they're going to do what? To hopefully get a scholarship. Why? Because the cost of education is so friggin' expensive and so competitive. When I came to California, my business partners all got to UCSB in California with a 3.1, and now you can't get to UCSB without like a 4.4, you can't. Like, they never would have got in. I dropped out of school, so I only got in because my aunt worked in the admissions office. The only reason I got into college, but it's a different world. Pressure. The pressure on everybody is the problem. And this is like, look, you can have whoever you want to have on the show, and they may have different opinions on it. This is me after 7 years now watching this, going, it's the pressure. We're a pressure cooker. Our kids are living our whole lives. So every house is a pressure cooker. Parents struggling at work, parents struggling with their own social media issues and family relationships, their marriages, their friendships, and then they've got 5 kids at home or 2 kids at home, and they're going, I don't have time to deal with this, and the kids don't want to upset the parents because they see their parents are struggling. Wow, we live in a different time.
Yeah, it's so different. I mean, just even I think about like when I went to college, right? Like, it was so cheap per semester, and then now the same one that I went to is like $5,000 a semester or more. And that's on the low end. But yeah, it's such a different world. And I think that all of these conversations are so important just to know, like, why is there a difference? How did we get here? Like you said, is like, how did we get here? How did we end up in this place? And I know that the world is going to evolve. It will always, right? But I think we have to do our due diligence as those that are trying to impact lives, those that are trying to have these conversations, because they are really important, and to know how we got here. But then we can also shift into how can we do better, and what are those things that you and I specifically, right, with our organizations, like, how can we help? So I definitely think that is part of the conversation, and I want to have that conversation, but we're going to go to our last quick sponsored break, and then we'll chat about that.
8 million people die by suicide in the world each year.
1 person dies due to suicide every 40 seconds. Have you ever felt completely alone?
Like your life doesn't matter.
You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Lifeline at 988.
Hope and recovery is possible.
You can help too.
With only $19 a month, you help us save lives through mental health and suicide prevention education.
Scan the QR code or go to makementalhealthmatter.org to sign up as a warrior for mental health today.
Are you crypto curious? Maybe it's a little too scary for you to get involved in all this crazy Bitcoin cryptocurrency stuff. Join me, your host, Charlie Stivers of Goose Live. Find us on Achieve TV Thursdays, noon Mountain Time, where we talk all things crypto.
Hello, this is Steve Ramona with the TV show Together We Serve, Fridays, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on E360 TV. Together We Serve.
And like that, we're back again. So if you happen to be just joining, make sure you go back and watch the beginning of this, because we've had some wonderful conversations. Before we went to the break, we were really talking about, like, how did we get here as society, and really, like, what are the differences of us growing up versus youth today? And there's a lot of differences, a lot of more things to have to worry about, and more access to knowing about those things. And there are lots of people like Jason and I that are out there doing amazing things to help in these spaces. But I want to kind of shift the conversation also to like, what are the things that we can do to help, especially as parents, as caregivers, as helpers, as general people in society today?
I mean, and that's where we need to go right now, because we all know there's a problem. And maybe we don't always know why there's a problem, but we all know there's a problem. So what can we do? We need to go back and build relationships. In my opinion, we need to go back and build relationships, right? We need to go back to the root of who we are as human beings, which are people who need people and need conversations with people. Being alone is the worst thing you can be when you're depressed. It's not where you want to be, where you need to be. So what can you do when you have someone in your life who is depressed? What can you do with someone in your life who's having mental health issues? And it might be extreme, it may not be extreme. Well, what you can do, in my belief, is be there for them. And here's what being there for them looks like. Is like, if you're like me and you've never been depressed, and Kelly, you've heard me say this before, it's like, I live in Southern California, I look out the window, blue skies. If I'm there with somebody who's depressed, I may only see clouds. And the thing to keep in mind is I can't convince them there's no clouds in the sky. I can't convince them of that. And the more I try, the worse it's going to get, and they're just going to push me out of their lives. All I can do is ask them about their clouds. Tell me what your clouds look like. How do they make you feel? What can I do to help you with your clouds? Are they always bad or some good? Just tell me. I'll sit and listen. And don't judge. Because what we all want to do as parents is fix, right? I have a lot of employees and a lot of people come to me every day, and they come to me every day with one simple thing. Jay, I have a problem. What do I do? My phone rings constantly. Jay, I have a problem. What do I do? That's all I do all day. But that's not what your kids want. That's not what people who are depressed and anxious want. They just want to be heard. They don't want you to fix their problems. So you got to be the exact opposite of who you want to be. Like, you want to save people. I know we all want to save people. We want to help people. So our natural reaction is, I know you just broke up with your boyfriend, but it's not the end of the world. Don't worry about it. You're a beautiful girl. He's an idiot. That's not healthy. Because in her mind or his mind, the world is ending. And you're not going to fix it by telling them it's not. You're going to fix it by listening and understanding and being there for them. And not looking at your watch and go, okay, I got 10 minutes to solve this. You got to go somewhere else. Right? You're going to cancel your other stuff. Sit in the moment. That's hard.
It is. I mean, it's so hard as a parent too, because I love to talk about that also, because I am very much like, I'm not a fixer as much as I used to be, but I also acknowledge that I have a hard time, especially with my kids, seeing them struggle. But I have to remind myself in those moments of like, you don't need to fix this, right? So ask some questions. And I like to do the layered question approach and find out, because I feel like with especially youth, like you have to peel back all the layers of the onion. And sometimes it can take so many questions, and sometimes it becomes a little, at least for me, a little frustrating, because we're not going anywhere. And I'm like, I'm a safe place. We can talk about this, but I have to take myself out, right? Like in those moments, I have to take myself out of the conversation, my ego, my assumption, my ideas, and I have to allow my kids to just express whatever it is and not judge them, right? Or not fix them. So I love that concept.
I mean, look, and there's a couple of things just to think about it, because we're in the kind of the solutions mode here, or trying to get some people's ideas and what they can do. First of all, you have to own your kids' mental health, and that's a big statement, right? And it's not a fair statement. And I know you're going, well, that's not fair. It's not it is. Like, if they broke their leg, you'd own that, right? You get them to the hospital, make sure it was fixed. You have to look at it the same way. Which means that, yes, you have to have the conversations, because there's not a therapist. It's almost like your kid broke his leg or her leg in the middle of the forest and there's nobody around. You can't just call the doctor. you've got to figure out how to help them get them out of the forest and then get them to a doctor. And mental health's the same thing. There's not always a therapist that you can just call and say, here, you take care of this, right? You have to look at, like, I'm in the forest with a broken leg and it's just me. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get my kid comfortable and I'm going to figure a way out of here. And that's kind of the same thing with mental health, is you have to have the conversation. You can't be afraid of them. And you got to keep in mind when you're having them, the things that we want to do as adults, they don't want to do. For example, we want to look each other in the eyes and have a conversation, because then we know we're paying attention, right? Kids hate that. They friggin' hate that. They don't want to do it. If you ever notice that when you're driving, that's when you'll talk to them, because they know you can't look at them. Like, you're going, wait, no, driving car, wait. They're like, ha ha ha, wait. So have a conversation in the car with them. Have a conversation on a walk with them. They don't want to look you in the eyes. They're embarrassed. They're ashamed. They're sad. They're whatever they are. They don't want to look you in the eyes, right? And so we created an album called Songs for the Drive Home, which is on my website. It's with BMG and all that kind of stuff. And it's just songs to listen to in the car about mental health with your kids. Side A is for younger kids, side B is for older kids. And it tackles mental health issues. And with the idea you play in the car, and they're kind of like a Jack Johnson-y kind of style of songs that we put together. We have a second album coming out this month. And it's all really geared towards, starting a conversation, because that's really what it comes down to. If you can start the conversation. We also created a card deck. I can't remember if we did this last time with you, the Tell My Story card deck. Did we send you some of these?
Yeah, I have some. Yes.
Okay. So they're just great ways to start a conversation. Like you grab a card and it's going to have a question on it. It's you got level 1 cards. They'll have like, what's something that cheers you up when you're feeling down? And you just go back and forth. They answer, you answer. There's here's another one. This is level 3. What's level 3 here? Describe a time you felt truly proud of yourself. I'm telling you, these are little simple things, but you will learn so much about your kids playing this game for a half hour. You'll be like, wow. In fact, I had my business partner in one of my in my production company. His mom called me up last Christmas and said, I just played that game with my 55-year-old son. I learned more about him playing the game.
Wow. That's awesome.
So you got to find ways to communicate.
Yeah. So Dana actually had sent me some, and she's going to come on the show. This is a a spoiler alert, but we're gonna play the game hopefully when she comes on the show.
Oh, are you really? That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I know, like, my son, one of his favorite things that we do is we turn off all the electronics, and while we're eating dinner, we'll just ask. We call it the question game. But I haven't considered so they're in my office, so maybe I'll take them home and I'll do that next time, because we just go kind of around with the family and ask random questions. So yeah, it's a great idea.
I mean, and look, all social media isn't terrible, by the way. When the kids were younger, we would sit around the dinner table and we'd have conversations, and then whoever said the funniest thing, right, we would put in a social media post of the night called Dinner Conversations. And it'd be like just the silly, dumb thing that someone said off of somebody else. That it's just having conversations. And that would be the dinner conversation of the night I post on Facebook. And we did that for probably 4 years. And so there's a whole bunch of them up there. Because I'm home like 3 nights a week. So 300-400 of these things up on Facebook. And then it became a fun thing to think about how social media is not a terrible thing, because you put it up there and then we got to read the comments that people would make on, oh, that was funny because of this, or you guys are hilarious. And the kids felt like this, they vied for who got to be the funny conversation that night. And then it's actually a book called Dinner Conversations that, I'm not saying you should go buy it, but we put it, Ryan, the last summer before he passed, he took all the stuff off of Facebook and turned it into a book. So, and I still think that was a great use of Facebook. I think posting pictures and having a place to save your memories is a great thing for Instagram and Facebook. So it's not all bad. And technology is not all bad. I can live anywhere in the world and get my work done. And there's Ryan, by the way.
Oh,
So-
nice.
So it's not all bad. And all the stuff that's going on in the world, I don't want to sound like the world's falling apart. Oh my gosh, because I don't think it is falling apart. I actually don't think it is falling apart any more than it was falling apart 1,000 years ago.
Mm.
It's always in a state of flux. There's always, unfortunately, a war. There's always, unfortunately, a hurricane. There's always, unfortunately, this. There's a fire. There's an earthquake. There's someone who got elected you don't like. That is the world, and we're still here. That's been going on for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So as we head into coming into January here pretty soon, my thoughts are, take some time, evaluate what you want to in your life next year and write it down. I'm a big believer in writing down goals. I've done pretty well in my life, and I can guarantee it's because every year I write down my goals, and every 6 months I reevaluate my goals, and I try to make my life better every single year. You have so much more control over your life than you think you do. It's easy to think you don't have any control. And when you think you don't have any control, that's when things go poorly. When kids think they don't have any control and adults think they don't have any control. So start with the simple things you can control. What time you get up in the morning, how late you go to bed at night, how much TV you watch, the food you put in your body, going for a walk, getting some exercise. You have full control over all those things. And those simple things can change your life and change your mentality. The connection with your gut and your mind is massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably had lots of people on the show talking about that a lot better than I can do. You can change who you are as an adult or a child, and you can absolutely have control.
Mm.
And the thing that I wish I could get people to understand more is that it's just a moment in time. Things change. You might be feeling like the world's going to come to an end today. And in 3 months, the world's great. And in 2 months after that, it's coming to an end again, and then it changes. Nothing is static and nothing is forever. And if people could just understand that the way you feel today is not going to be forever, good or bad, right? Then it's going to change. And if you know it's going to change, there's no reason to be too frustrated by it. Everything always changes. I don't know anyone in my life who's gone through a bad time that has gone through a bad time forever.
Yeah.
They go through bad times for periods of time. And you don't go through great times for long periods of time. You go great times for periods of time. It's like this. I wish I could get people to understand that. I wish I could have them understand that just because it sounds like this is the end of days, it's not.
Yeah. And I think that's a great conversation that we also have with our youth, because really, truly, I mean, their brains don't fully comprehend that because they're not developed yet with the rational part of the brain. But if we can help our youth to understand that, and for us to really know it too, I think it will make things a little bit easier and make it like not having that catastrophizing that a lot of people unfortunately have. So,
well, and keep in mind too, Kelly, is like you want to have that conversation about things change over time, but not when they're in the middle of a crisis, right? In the middle of a crisis, you just have to listen. This is what makes it hard. You want to have that. Hey, you got to understand that things change. There's good times and bad times, but not when they're in the middle of a crisis. You have to have that so that when they get to a crisis, they understand it. Yeah. So you can't wait to start these conversations. You can't look at life the way I did. Go, my kids are great. Everything's awesome. Nothing to worry about. Because then you get hit with a baseball bat to the head.
Well, I know we're coming close to the end, but I know eventually we're going to have the cards on our website. I've been talking to Dana about that. However,
great.
If somebody wants to grab the cards or they want to know more about Tell My Story, what is the best place for them to do that?
Go to tellmystory.org. I do recommend, if you like music, I think the music was something I'm very proud that we did. The card deck is great. We just sold it for, $20, $30, whatever it cost me to make them, whatever the heck it is. That's the only place we have them. I haven't put them up on Amazon and stuff. It's too crowded in there. And then, there's the movie Tell My Story, the Hot Lava Talk. You can Google Jason Reid Hot Lava Talk, but it's on Tell My Story too. It's a good place to start. And by all means, I'm not the only place. I'm just one point in this whole journey, and there's a lot. My only thoughts to everybody is just, you got to own it. You got to own it yourself. You got to own it for your kids. There's a huge connection between how you physically feel and how you mentally feel. And nothing lasts forever. So good and bad.
And for those of you that are listening, it is tellmystory.org that you can go to find out more about Jason, about Tell My Story, all the amazing things that they are doing. We have known each other for a couple years now, which is really, really cool. And looking to just further our collaboration. But make sure you go check it out. And any final thoughts that you want to share with the audience?
No, just Kelli, that I really appreciate everything you do. You're consistent. You're there. You show up all the time. You care so much about people. You're trying to make a huge, massive difference in this world. You do more in this space than I'll ever do. And I just appreciate everything you're doing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you and for coming back. It's so great.
Anytime you want me.
Yeah, I will.
I usually don't get invited back anywhere. So, this is great.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I know. Well, you'll have to come back on the next year's special too for the Mental Health Action Day. So I'll reach out to you.
Whenever you want me, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right, y'all, that was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. I have the coolest people that surround me and that I have formed relationships and collaborations with. And really, truly, we're all trying to help and make impact in this thing that we call life. And however we can do that, whether it's through sharing our story, whether it is having a card deck that you can go talk to your kids with. Like, I know for me, sometimes it's hard and we don't want to always talk about what is your favorite car? What is the car that you want, right? In my house, we talk a lot about cars. But there's other things that you can talk about, and maybe you'll learn a little bit more about yourself and about your kids or your spouse or whoever it might be that is in your house. I highly recommend just taking a chance. It's not going to hurt. You're going to build more connections. You're really going to form that community. Maybe you take it somewhere into your community, but really, truly, let's have these hard conversations and make them easy. They don't have to be hard, right? And then we can ultimately save some lives in the process. And maybe you'll be able to stop the crisis from happening, or at least alleviate a little bit if that happens to come up in the future. Whatever you do, make sure you come back next week. My guests are just stacking up and they're so amazing. And I'm so blessed to have such incredible people that share the vision and really, truly want to help. So I will see you back here next Monday, whether you're watching or listening. Bye, y'all.